So, Serkan, thank you for taking the time to talk, my friend. It's good to catch up.
My pleasure. Yeah.
You know, one of the things people always say, and and ask me is, you know, anybody traveling say, they hear about IOSA. So the question I have for you sounds like a simple one. What is IOSA?
Yes, I'm still wondering after all these years. No, no. It's an interesting program. In fact, I got into it a few years back. Um, it's a safety audit program that IATA developed pretty much exactly 20 years ago when the first IOSA audit was done. So this year it's celebrating its 20th anniversary. It's an audit program for commercial air operators that constitutes a commonly agreed safety standard among themselves. It was brought to life 20 years ago as a result of a tragic accident close to Halifax, in which the air operator was in a code-share agreement with another air operator. And as a result of these investigations and in the aftermath of that accident, it was realized that authorities or regulators have only limited means to oversee the safety of foreign airlines that are code-sharing with their own national carriers. Code-sharing, for that matter, is basically a type of cooperation in which you purchase a ticket with one airline and the flight number is basically on another airline's flight. So you fly on on a flight number, but the actual physical aircraft is another operator, and they share the flight code with each other.
Okay.
And so it's an audit program that was developed in order to have a means to audit these foreign airlines against this commonly agreed standards, because the regulation that was developed was requiring all these carriers to audit each other.
Okay.
So in 2003, the first audit was done, and here we are 20 years later. It evolved quite a bit since then, though.
Well, I know that any member airline operator who wants to become a member of IATA has to be IOSA certified. So I'm sure from 20 years ago to now, how many operators do we have who are IOSA certified?
So right now we have some 400 plus airlines on the registry, out of which some 300 plus are IATA members. So you have good 100 plus operators that are not IATA member but still seeking IOSA registration. Yeah.
And just for layman terms, what's the initial, like, three of the real primary benefits of them being IOSA certified? What does it say to the public when they say, "Oh, this airline is IOSA certified"? What is the benefit they say? What does that mean to them as a general public?
I mean, first and foremost, it's a safety assurance program. That means it is a program designed to assess the operational safety practices of an airline against the safety standards that we develop here at IATA, so that a registered airline demonstrates compliance with these standards. So it's I would say a very solid baseline to demonstrate your safety practices. The other benefits that it brings, besides access to IATA membership, is it's an established standard, as I said, to get access to code-sharing agreements as an airline. So it's a very important tool to grow their collaboration and to virtually grow their network and actually offer a better network to their customers. But it has grown quite a bit in its value proposition over the years. So many regulators today complement their safety oversight with the results they receive also from the IOSA program. Of course, all within the confidentiality rules that are in place.
Right.
We're not sending around any audit reports, without the airline's consent. And by doing so, actually, the program helps to reduce redundant audit activities and oversight activities in the industry, reducing the cost for the operators in this program.
That's an important point because, it's all about being very efficient and smart in the way we do things. So if we have one standard that's there, instead of doing multiple audits all the time that everybody can agree on, there's a great cost benefit to that. So thank you for telling us what IOSA is, but I really need to understand, it's such a good program, it's highly established, it brings value to our members, why is there a need to change this program now?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, it has been very successful, clearly, without doubt. I think, and this is, all the credit to those professionals that have been working, developing and working on this for all these years. it's also, we have to also stress safety performance in the airline industry is not due to IOSA. Okay, we need to be clear about this. This has never been the claim. Safety is produced by all these hardworking employees and team members and safety professionals and operational professionals that are working in the airlines, in the OEMs, in the air traffic management system. So it's a collaborative effort. There are scientists, there are trade associations, there are lots of people working on this. So IOSA is, I think, at best, a small wheel in this whole system. So it was inaugurated in 2003. Lots of airlines joined it, and it established itself as a very, very solid baseline industry standard. Right. Okay, so far so good. It performed a lot of audits, and these audits were performed by audit organizations that were basically under the remit of IATA, and they did a tremendous job in delivering high quality audits. However, the audit process is fairly standardized, which again it bears its own benefits. Highly standardized means it's easy to understand. Right. It also means it's easy to replicate. It is fairly easy to train auditors. I mean, when I say easy, of course, we need to take that in the big picture of things. But it's a standardized process. Right. Yeah? So we would audit every operator exactly the same way and exactly against the same standards, no matter the size, the complexity, or the nature of the operation of the airline. But it also has its limits. But before I go there, so it was a standardized process, and the audit itself would assess the compliance against a certain standard. That means I verify, if there's a requirement, you have to train the pilots. I verify, do you train them, yes or no? Right. That is great to establish that baseline, as I said. However, after 20 years, when you repeatedly assess compliance, and you reach that compliance level in the industry, then you realize the limit of this compliance assessment, as important as it still is today. And the limit is that it doesn't tell you more. It doesn't tell you actually whether that training program of the pilot was robust or not. It just tells you that it was there.
Right. Doesn't tell you to what extent.
It doesn't tell you any degree to which that practice was established in a solid way or not, because the program or the audit protocols were set up the way they were set up, because compliance is important. However, again, after 20 years of auditing, thousands of audits, literally, you realize that you basically reach a ceiling where the airlines don't have a learning curve anymore through the audit, because they just know, okay, I have a pilot training program in place. They knew this already 2 years ago, and they will know it in 4 years. So you don't give them any additional insights from which they can improve. And since this is a program that lives off the network effect, meaning airlines use the audit results for each other to monitor each other's safety, as well as regulators using the audit results, neither did their stakeholders see any value in the audit reports anymore, or the value was decreasing, because you knew 2 years ago your co-chair partner has a pilot training program in place. You know it now as well. They're in compliance with it, but still it doesn't give you necessary insights as to how well they're doing. Do they develop their programs along with the times? Do they address the challenges out there appropriately? So that lack of insight became more and more evident over the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years, I would say, as the airlines on the IOSA registry matured. So we got very strong indications that we really had to move away from this rather standardized product, if I can call it that way, towards a more customized solution. In technical speak, we took a risk-based approach.
Right. Well, one of the aspects when we talk about a risk-based approach tends to talk about something that you have mentioned in conversation to me, and you talk about the audit scope of the risk profile of the operator. What do we mean by that?
So we started off with the terminology risk profile, and there are lots of terminologies out there. So we have to be, of course, I need to be careful with buzzwords, right? Because I may be throwing around maybe sometimes too many of them too. So what we in essence really mean is any audit activity, IATA, the airlines, any other industry, regulators, is limited in its resource. Yeah, like many things, of course, in this world.
Right.
So if you want to ascertain the compliance or if you want to perform a safety assurance activity with a finite set of resources, you need to make the best possible use of these resources. And going through, to simplify it, a checklist with 100 tick boxes in a finite time is good.
Yeah.
In an IOSA program for 20 years. Meaning you can do this, but if you want to really improve the effectiveness of the audit, which only serves the purpose of improving the safety performance in the industry, then you need to change something in the concept. So the risk-based approach that we introduced serves the purpose of making the IOSA program more effective in helping the airlines operating more safely. And more effective for us means when we perform an audit, it must have a bigger effect on the airline after than it has in the last 20 years, which was merely performing a compliance assessment. So what we do in risk-based is now we have a much more comprehensive approach to a given audit. It's not anymore the standard approach that basically is a one-size-fits-all in terms of auditing. We take the operator's profile and we tailor the audit scope to the operator's profile. But before doing that, we take all the IOSA standards and recommended practices and we prioritize them, in fact.
Okay.
Once we prioritize them, we then actually tailor them or prioritize them one more time to the profile of the airline, as I just mentioned. That means in a risk-based audit, you have less standards, less items in your checklist, but those are the ones that are the most critical to that airline.
Okay.
And what we then do is we keep the same resource that we have kept before. That means we have more time to do a more thorough audit on the airline, and that allows us to introduce new features, new processes, such as the maturity assessment. So we reinvest that time that we gained by not auditing all these low priority standards that we have been ticking for all the years.
So you're focused on the areas that are critical to look at first.
Exactly. By doing that, again, we have a much more meaningful activity because I don't come into your shop anymore and I verify every 2 years that you have to have a second pair of glasses in the cockpit as a pilot. Although I already know that in the last audit 2 years ago, your company was in compliance with this procedure, and 4 years ago as well, and 6 years ago as well. So in short, it's a smarter audit.
Well, 100%. But you mentioned another buzzword, I'm sorry to say. You said maturity assessment. What exactly is a maturity assessment?
Yeah, so the maturity assessment is our response to how can we add on to the compliance assessment. So compliance assessment, again, is very binary. You have your pilot training in place or you don't. So we said, okay, how can we introduce a fairly objective way to introduce some notion to this assessment? How strong is your pilot training program? So we did a lot of research to see what is happening around us in adjacent programs and spaces, and we introduced what we call the maturity assessment model, which is basically a model that assesses the maturity of the airline's safety practices, producing a maturity assessment report that goes beyond the compliance aspect. So it doesn't only say you had a pilot training in place or not, but it also assesses how mature on a scale that pilot training program was.
Okay.
And this maturity assessment, important to note here, is not critical at this stage for the registration renewal of an airline. The airline still has to demonstrate that they're in compliance, but they will also receive a maturity assessment report, which hopefully will give them a lot of value, but doesn't put any tremendous pressure on the audit process.
Well, speaking of the pivot in the program, as you say, you're moving to a more adaptive, more flexible means to really look at an audit scope centered on specific areas that may be of high interest. So in terms of any new concept or process, there's always a validation period. And I know they probably did some validation, maybe some pilot audits. So based on the experience with probably what you did with those pilot audits, how has that experience differed from, say, doing a traditional audit?
Well, the pilot audits were extremely important. We have been working on this concept with our governance groups, which are comprised of airline experts, of course, and key regulators. So we're not doing this in isolation. That's also important to note, of course, because of the stakeholders that I mentioned in the beginning that are making use of the program today. So that's important. But the pilots were there to actually make sure we're pivoting this important program in an organized way. You know, we don't just go ahead and press forward and implement changes and then see what happens. So we had to come up with certain hypotheses. You know, what are we really trying to achieve? What is the objective behind this change? How are we going to measure whether this objective is achieved? And the pilot audits were basically serving the purpose to test this new concept. And we've done this with 7 volunteering operators that, you know, that had the guts to say, yes, you know, let's do this, because it was a live audit. For them, it's not something light to undergo an IOSA audit. It's a serious thing for an operator. And these carriers, they were courageous enough to say, you know what, we want to try something new. We want to be participating in this with you. What went differently? A lot of things went differently in these pilots. Yes.
Well, I'm very interested to see what went differently. Like, what was the initial feedback? I mean, as you say, it's never an easy thing to actually volunteer and put your hand up and say, you know.
The initial feedback, I mean, of these operators in general.
No, well, of the 7 pilot audits you did.
Yeah, so they went through it subsequently, right? They didn't go through it all at the same time, so it happened all in slices. Yeah, the first operator was up somewhere in August last year, I think. You can imagine, not only the whole team was working very hard behind this, and the airline as well, but we were nervous.
Of course,
no question about that, because everybody had heard about the fact that we're changing things, and also the model was changing, which was involving a lot of stakeholders in this, you know, rather small community. You know, not to mention also the AOs that are still an important part of this program.
Right.
And so when the first airline underwent that pilot, you know, there was a lot of attention on that. In short, I can say today that by and large, all the pilots went successfully, in the sense that the hypothesis that we've built before, they were confirmed through the new methods that we tested to a very, very large extent. And first and foremost, you know, really, John, is that the airlines were happy.
Well,
you know,
of course.
Because in the end, we're not doing this for ourselves here at IATA. We're doing it for the operators. They know their business. They know the audit. They know what it brings to them in terms of value. And the feedback that we've gotten from them was overly positive, really, I have to say. And that makes us, you know, very proud, of course. Yeah.
Well, look, if there's a value proposition and operators see that value in it, and we're moving in the right direction of continuous improvement, it's always a good thing. You had mentioned AOs, which are audit organizations, and part of the program is to bring those audits under one roof, under the quality assurance of the IOSA team. So there's a move. How has that transition been to move that in? Because that's a large framework to put under one roof now. And how has that transition been in terms of, will everything be in place for this new framework to be implemented?
Yes. Yeah. We're on track with the whole transition program. We have conducted already 14 risk-based audits so far, including the trials. There's another 18 or so coming just before the end of this year. We're reshaping our processes. We are building up our internal capacity. So we have a dedicated quality assurance program, making sure that we keep up the quality during this, you know, transitional phase. So the work in progress is very well on track. I can say absolutely, you know.
Well, you know, the thing I would want to probably know if I was operator is, okay, the new RBI audit is coming. Are my internal processes, are my people up to speed with, is the methodology going to change from what it was before? Does my people need to have any special new skills or competences? How do I prepare for what's coming? How do I prepare my organization? So I know that's a very loaded question and very wide, but you can probably narrow the scope.
In short, I would say keep calm, you know, and carry on. But yes, of course, there are changes. I mean, I think what contributes to the nervosity is that it's an important audit again, and people have been very much almost not indoctrinated, but they have been very much used to actually prepare for an extremely standardized, which has also benefits, of course, but also very repetitive exercise. You know, so everybody knew exactly what to expect, and so was sometimes even the outcome, probably.
Right.
And now the experience is changing, only for the good, I can say.
Right.
Of course, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. There are lots of things we're refining. But what can an operator, how can an operator prepare for? We have a lot of content out there, trying to make sure we reach everybody out there.
Right.
We've done over, I think, 11 workshops this year worldwide, where we met over 1,200 colleagues from the airline industry, where we basically passed on the new concept and had very good, interesting conversations with them. It was lots of fun to meet them. We have documents out there that outline the concept, and every time we engage with an airline at a risk-based IOSA, because now it is IATA engaging with the airline directly, from A to Z throughout the entire process, we make sure that we onboard the carrier and the teams there, and we accompany them carefully, step by step through the whole process. So nobody gets thrown into cold water.
Yeah.
We have a dedicated team. We have audit managers that take care of you and your team at the airline, starting at the early stage when we enter the contract, all the way to closing the audit. So that's important to know. Nobody's left alone there.
Yeah.
The change in how to prepare is really, I think, the biggest change that the operators will have is to be receiving maturity assessment, and the audit procedures on site by the auditors have changed quite a bit. So most likely the whole face of the audit on site will be different to big part in the audit. It means, for example, it's not going to be this dull reading out loud process of ISARPs anymore.
Right.
So you don't have to sit in front of the auditor and turn pages and show references in a manual anymore. Rather, there will be meaningful conversations, dynamic and inspiring conversations with the airline management, with the airline staff. And I think it's new, it's an unknown, so definitely it creates a bit of uncertainty. But from those audits that we've done so far, the refreshing component of it is so overwhelming. Everybody was very positive about the experience. So what the airline again can expect is that a team of auditors that will still assess the compliance, but also have deeper conversations, step back for a moment, and not just tick the boxes anymore. How they can prepare? There's various ways, of course, but again, we accompany them through the process, to be short.
Well, I know on a personal note, from a training point of view, I'm very thankful to your team, because there's a lot of elements that we have garnered. I mean, our programs in safety, especially for IOSA, your team vets and validates all our work, and it's highly beneficial, because from a training standpoint, we want to ensure that we are in touch and everything that we have is aligned with the new processes coming up. It's a learning curve for all of us, but I think at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that we provide the programs that really lead to the proper skills and competencies that are going to be required for the future.
Yes.
So we're very thankful for their contribution, and we are very hopeful that that we will try to do our part in training to ensure that that they feel less anxious about this process. But what's good about it is it's changing. It's very dynamic. It's very engaging. It's very participative, which is a good thing. Other thing I was interested in is, we know that IOSA is for our members, is for those who are registered. So is there a big difference for somebody, an airline who's interested in the IOSA process, to go through that audit as an initial to become a member versus the one who is doing a renewal? What are the differences between these new audits now under the RBI framework?
Yes, a very good question. So we're at the beginning of this journey, and we're refining a lot of the processes. But for the time being, initial registration audits follow the conventional IOSA process.
Okay.
So any operator or any professional out there that is wondering now, oh my God, do I have to yet change my preparation? We haven't even done one. They will follow the conventional process.
Good.
Also because it is actually logical from our perspective to have an initial assessment, just establishing the baseline, focusing on the conformity with the standards. And then as the airline matures through audit process than to come with a more tailored approach.
I don't know if I have any other questions for you on this, and I think what you've said is quite informative.
Yeah, I hope so. We're, it's a very exciting change for us. Clearly, there's quite a road ahead of us. So we're refining the processes as we go. We carefully listen to the airlines. That's, I think, also something very important to note. It's not that we establish a process and we just again press on with it, and we're stuck with it. This is going to evolve. I mean, now, maybe even a bit more clearly than ever before, I understand now what we mean by continuous improvement.
Yes.
Because you can't be stuck forever in a conceptual phase or in a trial phase. You did the beta test, you refined the model, it hits your targets, customers are satisfied, and we're rolling it out now. But there will be improvements made going forward before we reach, operational excellence, if you will,
right.
or a more efficient operations within the program, because we are yet back at the beginning of a new value creation cycle,
right,
with this new program. Because really, this is what it is, John. It's almost a new program in terms of back office process, in terms of on-site field work, in terms of the way the product is delivered. There's new reports. If the airlines will read their maturity assessment report, I'm very hopeful that they will find a different degree of substance, of added value, of not only, by the way, opportunities for improvement, also highlighting where their strengths are in their safety management systems. So there's a lot of good game changers in this new process.
I think so, and the great thing about it is there's a lot of content, there's a lot of information that has been provided on the process, the reports that are going to be coming out, and there's always new information that's being provided through your team on our website, and you have a dedicated email for anyone who is interested in requiring more information on these processes going forward.
Yes, we have the website. We have Safety Connect, which is a platform that we established on Teams. We are establishing, or we are working on creating a collaboration platform where we will bring together all IOSA registered airlines, where they can basically communicate with each other, with us, where we're going to share content and support through the platform with them. We have LinkedIn, where we communicate with them. So we're trying to be there, but really nothing is as good as going and having a coffee with someone over something.
So Serkan, thank you for your time. We appreciate it, and hopefully when I invite you another time for some more information, we might get our questions we might get through this podcast, that you'll be willing to come and share some insight with us.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure, John.
Thank you.
Thanks.